We are back, baby. It's your boy Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector. This is the mission, right? This is the big one. This is what it's all about. Hashtag ending the stigma together. It's not called, hey man, it'd be cool if we ended the stigma one day. It's not called, hey, listen, if you're not busy, you want to end the stigma. No, it's called ending the stigma together. We are having dialogues. I tell you this every show. I don't have all the answers, but I have questions. Right? Folks are going to come on the show and we're going to talk about ending the stigma around serious mental illness, around mental health generally speaking, right? And normalizing the conversation. When I sit down at coffee with people and they say, hey, you know what, I can only stick around for about an hour because I have a therapy appointment. That's cool for me. That's real. Last night I was at an event and I was networking and talking to people and the topic of hashtag ending the stigma came up and a gentleman I was with says, I love to see my therapist. It's incredible. I've been in therapy for 4 years. That's the stuff. That's normalizing this stuff. That's what we need to be talking about. Don't have all the answers, but I have the friends who have the answers. And one of my friends, a long-term friend of mine, Dr. Larry Grubler. Sir, how are you?
Pleasure, Tommy, as always.
It's always a pleasure. Nice t-shirt, by the way.
Thank you. I love it. It's my favorite one.
You got like the original 5 of the t-shirts. So this is still the original batch, right? But you sat on the panel discussion with me at the Nassau County Bar Association, right? With Neela from EAC Network, Yolanda from Options for Community Living, and our friend Jamie Rosen. Jamie Rosen, first ever guest on this program. The mental health team, Jamie Rosen was here. And it's interesting how things in life get inspired because she saw me do something with the Health and Business Alliance at Viscardi, panel discussion. She said, could you take that to the Bar Association? And I said, I could. And then I said, let's elevate it. Let's make some T-shirts up just to continue this thing. And now it's a TV show, man. So it's really unbelievable.
That's good. I actually do remember that presentation because if you remember, there was a judge that was in the audience who had amazing questions because she felt bad about having to put people behind bars who had a psychiatric disability.
She didn't have a lot of options.
And she didn't have options, and she felt really bad. So I do remember that conversation.
And that's what it is. And that's just paying it forward and learning. And that's it. So let's talk about it. CEO, TSINY, Transitional Services for New York. I always say serving 5,000 individuals in the 5 boroughs in New York City, right? And
Nassau County.
And Nassau too.
Yep.
Oh, so there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so that part, I don't think I say that much. But serious and persistent mental illness, right? What does that even mean, right? So we could talk about that. But your background, how did you even get into this work? Why are you in this work? Let's talk about that.
It's really interesting. I had no intention of getting into this work at all. I was going to be an obstetrician. Oh, no kidding. Really. That's my major goal in life since I was 16 and held my first niece was to deliver babies. That's all I ever wanted to do.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I graduated college and I needed to get a job in the medical field, and I got a job as a counselor in a mental health program.
Okay.
For Mercy Hospital. And I started. And I actually loved it. The problem is that I didn't see that there was that much difference between the people that we were serving and my family. So we're sitting across from people, talking to them, and I could see myself talking to my Aunt Helen. And it would be the same type of thing. From there, I didn't go to medical school. I actually wound up going inpatient and becoming a therapist. And then from there, I wanted to go into administration because I thought it would have more of an impact on a greater number of people. So I went to go do housing for Transitional Services for Long Island. And then I went to the city of New York and learned budgeting and all those pieces. And then I really missed being within a program, working directly with people. I actually missed the on-call 24/7, which sounds really bizarre.
Missed that.
I missed that.
Because there's excitement to that?
It fulfilled a need to be needed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And so, whereas when I worked for the city, I left at 5 and that was it for the day.
Sure.
And so I came back and people were like, well, why are you doing that? You're going to have to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that works for me. That just works for me. And I still like the clients. They're the least of my problems, and to be honest with you, they're doing the best they can. I like the transitional model because you can help people get to a point in their life where they need less support. The bottom line is all of us need a different level of support at different times. So I used to use the term, you go back to get support, but that's not what I mean. I mean, you know you need more support. There are staff available to give you more support. You get that, and then you go back to wherever you were. And I like that.
Yeah. Two things that come up for me. And this morning, as we do this today, it's a Friday afternoon. This morning I did the 200th episode of Philanthropy in Focus. You were my second guest on Philanthropy in Focus. And why I'm bringing it up is what you just said about support. I say it all the time because you said it on my show. You said, Tommy, we all need support at different times. And this is 4 years ago, you told me that on that show. And I certainly didn't know that I'd be on this mission, this campaign to end the stigma, right, of this important conversation. But that's the same theme that you said all those years ago. We all need support at different times. And if we can think through that and the compassion and love in that statement that we all need, not one person or some certain segment of the population, we all do.
Yeah, I feel fortunate. You should feel fortunate. You've got a support system, a wife, kids, all that stuff, family, mother, father, whatever. A lot of people don't have that. Yeah. And my staff become the support for them. And we really instill that within all the staff that we hire from orientation on, that you need to be there. You need to be there to help meet needs. You foster independence, but if somebody needs more support, they're going to express that, and you're going to need to be there for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to go back to something you said as well about, you mentioned your Aunt Helen as an example. Now, I don't know what you meant by that. Did you mean you saw the humanity in people at your kitchen table and the same humanity with people you were serving? Or did you mean that you saw the need in people as it relates to mental health?
I saw the need as it relates to mental health, and that there was nothing to be. A lot of the people that when I first started, they were in the hospital for 30, 40 years. Don't forget, I've been in this, doing this for.
So take us back.
I know I look really young, Tommy, but I've been doing this for 42 years.
I always thought we were.
And so
I thought we were the same age.
Exactly.
But go back to that, because some people don't know that context. Some people who watch this program don't realize that people are in an institution for their
when
life.
I started in the 70s or early 80s, people had been in the hospital for 30, 40 years, and we were taking them out for the first time to live in an environment where they could become more independent. They were stabilized on medication, but they didn't have, think about it, you're institutionalized. You don't get to practice the skills of daily living. You don't make your bed. You don't do your laundry. You don't really
make a lot of choices, right?
You don't make any choices. You don't know how to take your medication. You don't know how to call the therapist to get an appointment. They need that assistance to be able to move forward, and that's what we help people. Nowadays, people are younger that are coming into the system. There is very few people that are in the hospital for long term, meaning years. 6 months may be a long-term hospitalization. There are many people that go in for 3 or 4 weeks. When I worked at Mercy, the people that were from my community were coming in because they were depressed. They were. I can tell you the myriad of stories I can't tell you the myriad of famous people that we actually served in the hospital, but there are, and that just it really impacts
everyone.
On every.
It's everyone, just like
everyone.
Cancer does, just like diabetes or heart disease.
Right.
But that's where I believe we're aligned in that there should be no stigma. Do we stigmatize people because they have cardiac?
No, but I was thinking about it before the show. But if I'm probably at an age where. So I'm the longest living person in my family. Like uncles died in their 50s and 60s because everybody had cancer. Cancer was a big thing back in the 50s and 60s, and you weren't allowed to talk about it. And there was a major stigma.
Seriously?
Oh. Yeah, I didn't even know what my uncles died from until many years later. You were not allowed to talk about it. Why would this man die at 55? Like, it didn't make sense to me, and I was only a kid. He had pancreatic cancer, but they didn't talk about it.
But I've never heard that, a stigma related to that sort of thing.
Total stigma, because they also thought it was contagious. So there was a whole bunch of stuff with that. Have I seen an evolution with mental illness? Yeah, a little bit. Certainly, there's still a major stigma.
Why do you think there's a stigma?
People are frightened of what they don't understand.
Yeah.
And some of the behaviors can be bizarre with mental illness. It can be. And it can be, frightening. I think with the advent of medications, it really does help. With the therapy, it does help. The rehabilitation and the support systems, those things help. They're needed. And we have to develop more of that for people. There's so many people that need services. I never thought I would go, when I think back about people choosing a living. I never thought I'd go into a recession-proof business.
Yeah.
I didn't. I say that all the time. There are so many people to help. I talked to Yolanda, who you mentioned before, and I said to her, the one good thing about being in the mental health field is that we don't have to be in competition with each other.
Yeah.
There's just so many people to serve.
Plenty of need, plenty of
So yeah, there's a lot.
Well, Yolanda's been on the show. She was on the show
she
a
told
couple
me,
weeks ago, and she wore the T-shirt because she's one of the originals. She's like the original 5 that got the T-shirt. And you know what you just said there, though, about that need. I used to have this joke, and I've stopped making this joke. But I used to make this. You would say, you know, the statistic was 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 of people who experience a mental health challenge. I used that word, but I used to say the number is much higher, and I had a cute little quip about it. I'm not going to do that right now, but I believe it's everyone. And I don't have a clinical background to say that. But when I say it's everyone, I don't mean serious and persistent as it might be defined in the DSM or things like that. But I look at it personally as a spectrum. I believe it's a spectrum of, you know, there's definitely that what you're referring to, serious and persistent. And then there's people who are quote unquote functional and get through their day and things like that. And I don't mean just people who have the blues, but I mean people who are having some serious challenges and things like that. So I think it affects, either it's going to affect you as an individual, or it's going to affect you as an individual as a caretaker. Because it's in your home, it's in your family, it's the way I'm saying it sounds rude, but it's around us. It's all around us.
It's all around us, and I think that it's not the issue of the symptom; it's the issue of how you cope and deal with it. Because there's something that just came out that 75% of the people are anxious now.
Yes.
What's wrong with the other 25% of the people?
Yeah, what are they doing?
With the world that we're living in, if you don't have some level of anxiety, from everything that's going on, the wars and the hostages and the just when you start the political stuff. I mean, I don't want to bring all that up, but if you don't have some level of anxiety, I would almost say you're not feeling based.
I just got a text message, and that survey is actually 75% are telling the truth, 25% didn't take the survey.
That's probably
that's
true.
what it is.
But it's how do you cope with that anxiety? Do you let it stop your functioning, or does it stop your functioning, or do you do things to help you so that you can function, you can get through the day in a healthy manner? And there's a lot of people that choose unhealthy manners to get through that. They're learning, and that's where the stigma of addiction comes in, because people are trying to cope.
Yes.
They just chose a coping mechanism that's not necessarily the healthiest for them.
It's not, but it works.
It's not that it works.
You know?
And so they're not, I don't want to say they're not doing anything wrong, it's just they need to find something that's healthier for them.
Well, when left to your own devices, right, as a young person who, if they are experiencing a serious mental illness, right, or they have some level of trauma that they're dealing with, right, it's easy to go to drugs and alcohol. Alcohol's a quick one. That's easy, right? That's more. It's ubiquitous, right? It's easier to get access.
It's on every block.
And we have big TV promotions for it, right? Everywhere you go, they're trying to pitch it to you. So that's the one that I think is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, but that people will say, look at that person. They're addicted to drugs. They're a loser.
Right.
That's not fair.
All of that is the problem. Where is the humanity in that? Like, by the grace of God, like, how do we say that?
Because people don't understand.
They don't understand.
And when they don't understand, they tend to criticize. They tend to really make fun of. That's the easiest way to cope with it.
I was in a conversation last night, and somebody is telling me how they have a friend whose spouse just took their own life. And when I hear that, my heart breaks for that individual person. Yes, for the family, but how much pain was he in? That's what crushes me. How much pain, right? That was the way, that was the only way, and that breaks my heart. Is that sort of thing, you know? And some people will look at that and go, "Ah, come on, that's what they did," you know, like that. I go, don't you understand? Where's the love and compassion for that individual person? Right. That's how I.
As a psychologist, as a therapist, throughout my mental health career, that's the one thing I think that hurts the most. Was when people take their own lives, because I feel like, and I've always felt like I put myself out there that you can contact me at any point, the lowest point. So why didn't you contact me? Why didn't you make the phone call? But it was explained to me by my therapist that it's the perfect storm. everything comes. It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's the perfect. That everything comes together in a negative manner for that person,
Yeah.
all at one time.
Yeah.
And they take their life.
And your expectation,
My expectation would be that they call me.
Yeah, right.
Why didn't you call me? I'm pissed. I hate to say it like that, but I'm pissed. You didn't call me. We would have been over to your house in 2 minutes.
Of course. But we have no idea where they were.
Exactly.
Right? Like
it's the like a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and there was probably not a thing called call Larry.
Exactly.
Right? Like
no,
that didn't fall into
that's
the
so narcissistic of me to say
well,
that I could have done something better.
Well, if they called you, but how can they be there mentally
Right.
to make that phone call, right? And we did this, and guys, if you're watching this, 988-988-988 if you're dealing with anything right now. And I didn't start the show thinking I'd be doing that, but a couple weeks ago we had a peer advocate here from Zucker Hillside Hospital, and we sort of shouted out that because we got into this dialogue, and I'm like, if somebody finds this and needs the support right now, reach out. If they need the support from TSI, how would they connect with TSI, just as an example, too?
Well, we actually have a centralized intake. It's very easy. 718-526-8400. Ask for intake, and they will look at what you need. They'll refer to the correct program, and also refer you to the myriad of programs that we have, because we have residential, we have outpatient services, clinics, we have a day program, all of those things for support services.
So what does transitional services actually mean? Because you kind of touched upon it, but what does that mean?
The simplest way to describe it is that it's a whole bunch of programs that are put together, residential and outpatient, to help people go from a point in their life where they need a lot of support. So let's talk about residential services. We have staff available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you're actually living in a building, and there's staff on site. And then you transition. As you become better or more recovered, you can move out into an apartment and do things on your own. Staff will go to visit you 1 to 7 days a week. And then as you become quote unquote better or more recovered, or your rehab is going well, you can move out to your own apartment, permanent housing, and get visited once a month. The problem is that people don't. It's not a straight, narrow path all the time.
Everybody's got their own weaving, right?
So there may be a time where somebody needs more support, and that's the thing I like about having all the different options, so that we could provide the additional support. We even have a respite program that keeps people out of the hospital if they don't want to go. They can stay for 28 days, and then they can go right back out to their living environment, deal with whatever they're dealing with. And then go back out.
Two things I want to bring up, and I know you have always been great about giving the tour. If anybody wants to come out, listen, if you're nearby to Queens and things like that, gang, tsiny.org, right? tsiny.org is the website. Larry gave you the phone number. We'll share that on the screen later on. The thing is, if somebody wants to come out and go on that tour with you, I want to hear about the tour a little bit, but then we were just talking about, can we share a little bit about the film, and can we share about that? Okay.
Sure. So if you want to take a tour, the easiest thing to do is to email me directly. So it's lgrubler@tsiny.org, and then my director of development will go ahead and set up the tour. We do it within 2 hours because we know people are busy, and we take them to various.
You don't make the tour happen if I want a tour and show up in 2 hours. You don't mean that.
No. It's a 2-hour time frame because there's a lot to show. We've grown so much over the last 10, 15 years. But I really want to get across to the point of the housing opportunities. I think that there's, when people touch and see and feel not only the buildings, but the residents that are living in them, they can relate to them better. It's so much better than me talking about them. I was telling you a story before about I was giving a tour of one of our programs where we had just recently taken in 42 people from the shelters, people that were homeless. And I didn't know what they were going to need when they came in, because in my brain, you don't even have toothpaste if you're homeless. Like, you don't have all that stuff.
So we were doing this. We assume, right?
We assume, but we had this whole campaign to make sure that they had clothing and socks and toothpaste and deodorant and all that stuff. Anyway, I was giving the tour to people that were going to provide funding for us. And one of the residents, we went into his apartment, and he took over the tour. And he started to talk about his experience of being how he got to be homeless, how he got to the place called the Delson, which he was living in, and how he's now working at Trader Joe's, and how he has a girlfriend. Unfortunately, the girlfriend's not doing all that well, but he has a girlfriend, and his life is back on track. And I thought to myself, wow, this is so much better than me doing the talking, because it's coming directly from him. So we happened to connect with Cruise for a Cause that works with not-for-profits, and they do films. And they put together a film of both him, who was a gentleman that grew up in the lower side of Manhattan in Brownstone. And he gave a tour of his original house. He's pointed to his bedroom.
Yeah.
You know, you could see him as a little kid saying, "This is where I lived." And how he wound up, his parents died at 17. He wound up on a park bench. I mean, the house, as I told you, is probably worth $5-6 million now.
Right.
But he was left, you know, just with nothing.
So it wasn't
and
a
the
choice he
despair
made.
and the homeless. No, it wasn't. And yeah, he realized his own depression caused him to be on a park bench. Yes, drinking too much. Yes, doing all the stuff that he.
But he's hurt. He lost his parents.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know,
And you know, it also takes away the stigma. This is an educated man. This is not a low life,
Right.
you know. So, and then the other person that we were talking about was somebody that was in the military and that had PTSD, and had to overcome that. And she's getting her life back together. So we're providing those types of opportunities, but it's better coming from the residents themselves.
I think that's great. And the medium that, you know, that's going to be a film that's coming out, and just to be able to do that, and the bar isn't so high, meaning you don't need big production. You know, I have some cool stuff we're going to do that, you know, in the public, out in you need your phone and you need your big mouth.
The other honest part about this is I want the legislature, the politicians to be aware of, they're allocating funds for these homes. They're so needed.
Yeah.
People are going to progress. People are going to go back to work. They'll talk about the fact that they went back to work. They go back to work. What are they doing? They're off Social Security. They're contributing to society then.
Yeah.
And this is all of what we're trying to accomplish.
Rising tide lifts all boats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think we're accomplishing that. I'm very excited about that. We have a whole bunch of new programs that are coming up that, you know, my fantasy is once I find the buildings for them, we'll be able to get probably 60 to 100 homeless people off the streets of New York in any given year, and put them into permanent housing.
Right, so supportive, then transitional, right?
But also maybe directly into permanent housing. Some people do have the skills to live in permanent housing.
Right.
And
they just, see, a lot of times it's an access thing, right? Like they need the leg up, they need that support that you told me about 4 years ago, you know, and I want to make sure we don't run out of time. So I want to say what you want to say.
Sorry, I could talk forever, Tommy. This is my topic.
No, I know that. I think what we're going to do is on a regular basis, but say what you were going to say about that, and then I want to get to the ultimate big question that I always do here on the show.
I think that there's a lot of think about it from your perspective. If you were homeless on the streets living in a cardboard box and somebody came up to you and said, "I'm going to give you a home and I'm going to..." No, that's not how they believe it works.
Yeah, right.
So really engaging people and making sure that they understand and really giving them access and support to even get to that first level is extremely important.
I want to get you back on Philanthropy in Focus in the next few weeks. We spent an hour talking about TSI and why. We'll get deep into that. This conversation always brings me to this question. Dr. Grubler, how do we end the stigma?
Well, I appreciate you doing this. I think ending the stigma is talking about the issues. I think it has to be done earlier as children. I just watched a ABC News report about 3 young kids that were on a baseball team. And a woman had a child who suffered from Down syndrome who she actually brought to the field to just watch the game. And 3 young kids that were between 8 and 9 decided that they were going to put aside the baseball and they were going to play Ring Around the Rosie with her for 20 minutes. And the mother was in tears because people ignored her daughter till these 3 kids got involved. And so she was asked, you know, what do you think's going on? And she said, I just think these kids were brought up well. You know, I think that they knew something was different. They were not afraid. They engaged. And her daughter was smiling and happy, and it was really nice to see. So I think I do have hope for the future. I do see that there's less stigma than when I started, you know, 40 years ago. I see younger people now talking about their anxiety, talking about the fact that they go for therapy, talking about, you know, being on medication, all of that stuff that you know, when I talked about my
normalizing
Aunt
that.
Helen before,
Yeah.
I was not only referring to normal dinner conversation, mental illness runs in my family.
Sure.
So I was
You know
able
why?
to pick up.
Because you're part of the human family.
I know, but I never knew that one of my uncles suffered from bipolar.
Sure.
I always just thought he was a funny man.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get that until I was older.
Wow.
So when I was looking at the people that I was servicing, yeah, this is who I had dinner with. Did I think that they were weird? Yeah, I did as a kid.
Yeah,
but
sure.
but they were my family,
Right.
And it's the same thing as the clients.
I think
I just don't see it as any different.
Yeah, I think that's most people's family, though. I think that's what it is,
Yeah.
because it is our family.
It's our family,
It's our species.
but we all supported one another.
Yeah.
So my aunt needed something, my uncle needed something. I have one uncle that was, I often talk about that my grandmother, may she rest in peace, was the first vocational rehabilitation person.
Really?
My uncle had schizophrenia, and there was no hospitalization, and there was nothing along those lines. So they opened up a candy store for him on Jamaica Avenue, and she would get up and she would do the newspapers and do the, you know, the candy and do all that stuff. He would take a nap, then she would take over, then he would take a nap, and then unfortunately she passed away, and his whole support system from that end fell apart, and I actually became the support system as he ended his life ended. He was already close to 80 at that point when I took over. But she was amazing at keeping him together out of the hospital.
Sure.
There was no, they didn't believe in therapy. They didn't believe in medication.
But that's what it was. It was the support.
It was the support.
And
she was there for him.
She was there for him. Yeah.
She was there.
And as you said when we started the show today, not everybody has that support system,
No.
and that's what organizations like yours provide. So give me your email address. Shout it out one more time.
lgrubler@tsiny.org. People can call me too. It's 718-746-6647, extension 7012.
Perfect.
I know that by heart now.
I love having you in my life. I appreciate everything you and your organization does. I'm always there for TSINY. And, you know, over the years, I feel like I've inspired you to get out of your comfort zone a little with the outfits and stuff.
Totally.
Like that, right or wrong.
Totally. I always say that if I grew up again, I want to be Tommy D.
That makes two of. Oh, wait,
Tommy D.
So here's the thing. We are going to be here I'd like to have you come back and do this maybe quarterly with me or something like that, because honestly, you are on the front lines of this. You're one of the leaders I think about when I think about this conversation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Tommy.
You're welcome.
As always.
You're welcome.
You're doing a great thing.
I appreciate it. Gang, listen, this is #ending the stigma together. I promise you this, I got a lot of questions. I'm not going to have most of the answers, but my friends and colleagues and the leaders in this work are going to have those answers. If you want to learn more about this, all the information is going to be at the end of the show. And if you want to connect with me, and maybe you want to get somebody that that you're connected to, that you think has a good take on #ending the stigma together, let's get them on the show. Let's have this conversation. Let's open this dialogue, and let's normalize this. I'm your buddy Tommy D. Who am I? Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you again and again, just bringing you knowledge. And I'd like to say this has been another In Focus production. Make it a great day. See you later. Bye. Thanks.